So I'll just run through a little bit of the history for people who may not be familiar with
Oh,
it.
excuse me. He's going to bring us up. If most of the members here can remember some years ago, they were here when the law started off. All right, so you're going to update, it's more like an update.
So it's a 3.5 mile right-of-way that exists between Ozone Park and Rego Park. And runs roughly in a north-south direction. Actually, probably a little bit southeast to northwest. It links southeast Queens with central Queens and midtown Manhattan. It was operated by the Long Island Railroad for quite a number of years, starting back in 1880. And they ran it until 1950. There was a trestle fire. It was built of wood, not steel, and it burned in May of 1950, and rail service to Rockaway at that point ceased. Long Island Railroad was experiencing financial difficulties at the time. They couldn't afford to rebuild the trestle. Eventually, they sold the entire line to New York City, and they promptly terminated rail service north of Ozone Park. So amazingly, to get from southeast Queens to Flushing via subway, you have to go through Manhattan. And that's a situation that's existed for 55 years. So that's what we're trying to rectify with the revival of this railroad. Importantly, the right-of-way itself still exists. If you were up in the air, you'd see this long, thin stretch of overgrown property. There's still some rail there, but and some signals and other remnants of the railroad, but it would all have to be rebuilt, with modern equipment, obviously. So, as mentioned earlier, it runs from Ozone Park, approximately where we are here, up to Rego Park. And it connected at a place called the White Pot Junction, which is just south of Queens Boulevard. And that's where it connected with the Long Island Railroad's main line, which eventually terminates at Penn Station. Now there's another possible connection for QueensRail, and if you extended another half mile or so, it's not shown on this particular map, but you can connect right to the subway system on Queens Boulevard. And you'll see on the back of that handout a map that shows that particular connection. If anyone needs a handout, please see me, we have more. So why do we need QueensRail? What's the big deal? Well, from South Ozone Park to Midtown, you would save about a half an hour each way. It's incredible. I don't know what you think your time is worth. I think my time's worth a lot. And at the end of the day, it's really our most valuable asset. People wonder, well, how much is this rail line worth? Well, how much is hundreds of thousands of hours worth? Good public transportation is good for business. It helps bring customers closer to them. And it's also good for people because it expands our employment opportunities. It also brings communities together that ordinarily would not be able to reach one another. And it also connects us to different parts of the city. When I want to go into Broadway, I don't get in there very often because I just cannot face the commute. And QueensRail would make it a lot less painless, or a lot more painless, and a lot easier. And I think it would help increase the economic viability not only of South Queens, but also Manhattan. And people would be going both ways, to Broadway as well as to Rockaway Beach during the summer, perhaps. Right now, it's an overgrown piece of property. It's an eyesore, and it's a shame it's been left in this condition for so long. And the railroad is the perfect reason to put it back into shape. And it would be manicured, it would be using acoustic barriers to shield the community from noise. And it would look and be much more of an asset than it is today. Property values along the line would increase. That's been the history of property near public transportation. And finally, it would allow more cars to get off the road, which would be better for the quality of the air, for safety, and just reduce congestion in general. So, of course, there's going to be obstacles to a project of this size. And, it's going to take too long to build and be too expensive. Those are two excuses we hear time and time again. But, every other part of the city seems to be catered to relative to transportation. And this is something that we deserve in South Queens as well. Noise can be minimized. It is a train, it will make some noise, but certainly it should be respectful of the neighborhoods that it passes through. And the very best technology should be employed to make it as friendly a neighbor as it possibly can be. Some people are advocating for a park. We think it's probably more about just stopping the railroad from ever being built. The Queens has 435 parks. Forest Park is huge and underutilized. It's over 500 acres. We really don't need another park. We need a railroad to help us get to the parks that are already here. And the Parks Department can't even maintain the parks they have today. So a park option really doesn't make much sense. There are a few people whose houses abut the tracks, and this is New York City and you can't prevent that, No eminent domain would need to be exercised because the right-of-way already exists. It would be safe because there's no crossing of streets. It's all elevated trestles. So it's really a shovel-ready project. Forest Hills residents, there are a few vocal ones. They happen to be very politically connected, and they've been standing in the way of this railroad for a long time. And I think one of the primary reasons is they have a 15-minute railroad ride to Penn Station. So they don't necessarily have any particular need for it. One analogy I use, it's sort of like, if you live on the first floor of a 6-story condo and the elevator breaks, you don't want the elevator fixed because you never take it, but that's really not fair to the rest of your neighbors. And finally, politicians sometimes have a hard time looking beyond their own term. And a long-range project like this takes vision. And it takes somebody that is willing to step up and say, this is good for the community, not just for my term, but for this generation and generations to come. Without this kind of foresight, we would be in a bad way in New York City without the subways we have now. The momentum, however, seems to be shifting. There's an reactivation study that the MTA has been charged with completing by June. And we have really very limited information as to its scope or depth. We hope it's going to include an economic impact components, so we can see, you know, what this railroad would mean to all of us in terms of economic impact and quality of life. But again, we don't really know what's included. Studies that have been concluded have found that the right-of-way is a great idea, and it's low-hanging fruit, and is, in terms of transportation infrastructure, it's very inexpensive. Governor Cuomo has gotten involved in a lot of large-scale transportation infrastructure projects, and we're hoping that once the MTA study is released, he gets behind this in a big way. It can also provide a one-seat ride from JFK to Midtown Manhattan. And in fact, maybe we can piggyback on that capability, and maybe that will be what helps us get the benefit of QueensRail. The fact that it can also service JFK. I think another thing that has happened that on the surface seemed negative, you know, this park advocacy group, it's really, I think, forced some of us to get off of our backsides and really do something about this rail. If we want to preserve it and utilize it to improve our transportation, we can't wait any longer because it's going to be gone. And once the park starts being built, this thing is lost forever. This is basically the final slide. So, you know, what can your organization do to help? And in fact, every community organization along the route. Speak to elected officials, let them know how you feel, let the MTA know how you feel. You know, talk to your neighbors, write letters to the editor. You know, just talk it up. I mean, it's okay to have a different opinion. You know, maybe some people really do think a park is more beneficial for Queens, then that's fine. But at least it should be a conversation that we are all having, and that we try to come to some intelligent consensus that we can all feel good about. We're trying to get formal letters of support from every community organization that will be affected by this railroad. And we'd certainly like to, you know, ask that you guys consider doing such a thing, you know, at some point in the near future. The more support we can show politicians, the more likely this is to happen. Yeah. You know, so I feel a bit of a responsibility to try to, you know, leave the world a little better place than the way we found it. And this is some very tangible way we can do that, you know, for ourselves and our families. And I really appreciate your attention and your interest. And this is a little map showing, you know, in blue where QueensRail would connect. Essentially, it parallels Woodhaven Boulevard on the east side. And love to take questions or talk about it, whatever.
The
Yes.
last time you were here, right? Resort World was now getting ready, right? I spoke to them about getting involved with Resort World. Resort World is a multi-million-dollar business going to $1 billion business. It's one of the most successful gambling business in New York State, not only the city, in New York State.
And one of the largest employers in Queens, I believe.
Right. That's going to be bringing people from that side to right to Resort World.
Absolutely. They're very excited about this, as you can imagine.
Because I told them to get in touch with and work with Resort World, right, and the Racing Authority.
We have been in touch with them.
You understand?
We've spoken.
But with those, you can get good advertisements and you get the people involved.
Yes. They,
But I have not seen anything about it because I'm in close touch with Resort World.
well, you know, certainly mention this. And yeah, we had a conference call with Brian Eller, the president of Genting, New York, and he said that, you know, they are interested in getting involved. It was a little premature when we spoke to them. We just got our 501c3 designation as a not-for-profit, so this may make it easier for companies and foundations to fund us. We have been a little bit behind the 8 ball in terms of funding. You know, we're just getting started. We really are shoestringing this thing along. Whereas the Friends of Queensway, which are the park advocates, have received over $1 million in public funding. And so it's sort of a David and Goliath situation at this point. But you know, we're hoping that organizations like Resorts World can level the playing field to some extent.
That is what I'm thinking about too, because 4 years ago at Queens Civic Congress, you all had a demonstration similar to this, a presentation, and also your opposition had a presentation also. But they had to stop them because they brought a set of engineers and I was there, so I know what I'm right.
Yeah.
They brought a set of engineers and everything. Phil, the former assembly. Goldfeder.
Yeah.
He was there too because he was speaking for you. Right? I don't know if you were there.
I wasn't here with him, but yeah, no, he's been the #1 advocate.
Right.
And now his replacement, Stacy Fefferamato, is equally you know,
Yeah.
bullish about it.
Yes, but she don't have the presentation of Phil.
Yeah, yeah, he was. It was a big loss when he decided to move on.
Yes, but with that type of opposition, and those type of people that come in and give you all the engineering thing, right? Right, you all had a small 15 minutes thing, they almost could have go for an hour when we had to stop them.
Yeah, well, we're more respectful of your time than they are. But I would, you know, in
He's
terms of
laughing, no, I'm telling you.
It's a good
Right,
answer.
but also, as he said, I mean, they had received over $1 million in funding. The Governor Cuomo, you know, was in the process. They were around about a decade longer than we've been around. I mean, you know, to be fair about it,
But, you know,
it's
in
true.
terms of engineering, I mean,
Yeah.
that's hopefully something that the MTA study will be taking a look at, you know, so, and you know, we can only hope that they do a complete job and a fair job. But everybody, you know, as we're advocating in front of elected officials and agencies, very often they'll punt and say, you know what, we want to hear what the MTA has to say before we get behind it.
Well, I know the congressman across here, Meek, he is in
He's in
favor.
favor.
He's in favor.
Right, I know
Yeah,
that.
we have a letter from Congressman Meeks.
Right, I know that. We have other Congress people, right, like Jeff Reeves.
I think he's behind it as
Yeah,
well.
he's behind.
I didn't hear anything
Yeah,
from him,
right.
right? There were 70 people that should be involved. Is Bishop Titus, have you spoken to her?
Yes, she's in favor. We have a letter from her.
You have a letter from her?
Yes.
But she didn't come, look, everybody here is a constituent of her. Nobody hear anything from her.
Well, we don't hear a lot
Yeah.
from Michelle
Nobody's
on
actually
very
seen
many
her.
things. But she gave us a letter in support, and I will see that it's up on the website in the next week. We have a website,
That would be
QueensRail.
approved, because, all right, what
Yeah.
about Sanders?
James Sanders is very much in favor.
Yeah, he signed the letter as well, correct? He signed the thing, yeah.
You'd like to sign a letter, but,
No, I know.
I know
No,
that.
that's really a big difference.
and if they don't really do anything, it's a waste of time. I can sign a letter to them.
Right. Well, we'll just sign a letter in support of the MTA study is what it was, in support of the MTA study.
I know because the congressman talk about it, so that's the only person of time who talk about it.
That's
Right.
This is very-
Let's see.
Go ahead.
I'm not afraid to say, I fully 1,000% support the program. And I also understand that right now, it's a security problem. There's a lot of people use drugs in the part of Forest Park that it runs through right now. And if they opened it up to make it a QueensRail, it would be even a bigger crime problem, because now you've got the park that's in everybody's backyard. But my question is this: if you extended it all the way to Queens Boulevard, and I'm guessing that would be the presumption.
63rd Street.
Okay, so it would hook up along the E and the
Yeah.
F line.
Yes.
My question is there an existing connection, or would they have to
Yes.
build the connection?
They would, no, they would have to
There's
build
a
a
possibility.
connection.
When the
There's
Queens,
supposed to be
One at a
two
time.
connections here. One at Atlantic Avenue going down to the
Right.
Long Island Railroad.
Right.
That is an existing thing, although they keep,
Right.
it's kept quiet. Oh, I know that, I used to work for Verizon right here at the corner of Atlantic. Right this pattern. There is an existing line from there, right, that goes down on Atlantic Avenue. Right?
there are a couple of, when the Queens Boulevard line was built, there was a turnout built with the anticipation of connecting it to this line, number one. There's some question as to whether that would have to be changed a little bit because of the size of the new cars, but it could hook up to that. It could hook up at White Pot Junction to the Long Island Railroad. It could run on either one through the existing route, or it could run over the Long Island Railroad to the 63rd Street Tunnel and hook up to the line that goes across Welfare Island, Roosevelt Island. So there are a lot of alternatives.
I mean,
to
these-
get into Manhattan.
Yeah, the existing tunnel to the LIRR is still there. I mean, just to point that out. The LIRR connection at the LIRR's main line in Rego Park is still there.
White Pot Junction.
Right, White Pine Junction. It's a little bit of a turn off from the Queens Boulevard line. It was like a few feet, maybe like 20 feet had been dug whenever that was, but yeah, and then it stopped, yeah.
Now,
Right.
a good saying for that is Brooklyn, from here to really go. Let's suppose somebody here wants to see the next, right? You have no transportation of taking that. You can't use the A train because the A train
That's
will
right.
stop at that Atlantic.
The A train don't stop.
No. You have to go across the Skimmerhorn and take another train back and all this kind of thing.
Yeah, so
Right?
this
So,
might,
if they really open that line, and you can get it to go down to Brooklyn, with the connection to the Long Island Railroad.
that would be,
Right? That would be good, it would bring people from Brooklyn right up here to himself, to Resort World.
yeah. There are at least a half a
You know,
dozen.
Resort World, if people don't have to go there for gambling at all. I go there for probably different shows, and when they had a nice restaurant that everybody did like, I used to be there almost every month with my,
Yeah, they're building a four-star hotel,
right?
increased meeting space, so.
But they intend to build this four-star hotel. And sooner or later, we will know what plans are being made for this hotel. That is a selling point.
You have a question here, question.
The sooner you talk to these
Well, he's busy
people
talking.
about that,
Once he gets started, you know.
There's a question here, Mr. Jones.
once they talk to Resort World, these are the things that you have to sell.
We are absolutely going to do that. in
And not only sell, you have to get the politicians.
Maybe you want to stand up, maybe stand up, yeah.
But if I stand up,
To
I'm
make
walking
a
out.
deal and sit down with them. They're not selling their office, they're selling the community.
Once again, I support the program, but my question is, what about the argument that the existing lines up there, the E and the F line and the Long Island Railroad up there don't have sufficient rail capacity?
That's not really true. The existing IND tunnel has limited capacity, that is true. However, they could run the trains over the Long Island tracks to the 63rd Street tunnel. They could run it on the IND through to the 63rd Street tunnel. There's a lot of capacity in the 63rd Street tunnel. There are 2 tracks for the Long Island, 2 tracks for the subway. It's grossly underutilized. So, no, there is not a capacity problem getting into Manhattan.
And there should be more capacity after the East Side Access project has been completed. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just a quick, couple of questions. One, nothing's been mentioned of money, how much it's gonna cost preliminary,
$500 to $700 million.
say $1 billion.
Where they gonna get it?
Well, probably the federal government has programs to finance it. But even if, look, even if the city paid for 100% of it,
Right.
the city paid 100% of the cost of extending the number 7 line to the west side. The assumption is the number 7 line was gonna serve 30,000 people. This line probably would serve 30,000 people who now take the Q52, Q53 bus. It would take people from the A train who now have to go down through Brooklyn into Manhattan. Some of those people would take this route. So it's a win-win for everybody. And in New York City transportation figure, the cost is small.
Well, then, compared to other projects, though.
The other thing
The
too,
mayor,
Right.
the mayor wanted to put a tram from Brooklyn
Right.
to Queens
Right.
that nobody wanted.
For $2 billion,
Right.
so if they're saying 2, it's gonna be 4.
the tram.
But nobody wants this tram. This tram going to take away road
All right.
space, it's going to take away a lot of things.
Okay.
Nobody wants it.
Okay, Tony, here's the other questions. We're saying cost. Time-wise, how long is it gonna take? 2, there's gonna have to be demolition
No.
of that.
No,
Have you seen what's over here on Rockaway Boulevard?
there are now machines
Okay.
which will go down the track, once they take away the steel rails, chew up all the overgrowth and lay a rail.
No, I'm talking about the infrastructure, the cement already that's there.
What about it?
It's falling apart.
No, so, first of all,
There's decay there.
basically, the support is steel. Yes, there is damage to the cement.
So that's more money that they're gonna have.
Well, I mean,
That's gonna have to be demolished.
But rebuilding existing infrastructure though is cheaper than making a totally new subway like the Second Avenue
Going
subway or the
through
Hudson
a
River
neighborhood.
Tunnel.
It's going through a neighborhood in Forest Hills, Rego Park.
Look,
It's gonna be that quiet, the only way it's gonna be quiet if you have either a monorail or rubber tires on the
No.
train.
Well, we're open to any of the technical possibilities. I mean, look at the air train. How loud is the air train
But
commit?
if you're
Right.
going to connect it, running on the Long Island Railroad, which has tracks, or the E or the F train, which have tracks,
Right.
that's what you gotta put on these trains.
Well, maybe it's a lighter vehicle that's compatible with those tracks. You also run along the Montauk line. You know, Elizabeth Crowley, city councilman, has that plan to put light rail on the Montauk line, which had Long Island Railroad, which is still a freight line. So I'm saying maybe you could connect to that line as well. I mean, that's another
So that means
possibility.
there we're gonna have a shuttle,
no,
per
no.
se.
I mean, it's a possibility. There's a lot of options on the table. We're trying to work with whatever could be the most cost-effective, best option.
All right.
Instead of going back and forth, any more questions? Okay,
Is there a concern, so in this part of South Queens, we've largely been insulated from the
Ignored.
I'll use the word isolated, insulated from the gentrification that we've seen in other more prosperous parts of the city that are well connected.
excuse me?
If you're comparing here to Williamsburg, yeah, I'll say that we are protected from those price increases. I'm not saying it's affordable, but we don't, the average home here is not $1
What
million.
save us?
I'm sorry.
What saved us out here?
Oh, you don't think it's the isolation?
Listen, what saved us here so far is just we limited to 1 and 2 family homes.
It's the zone.
Right? If we was just like Williamsburg and those places, then we'd lose out big time.
Well, so I guess,
And we still having problems because those mansions that going up, we have one that is under investigation right now. It's supposed to be two-family homes, right? But each side has 4 meters. So that is 4 and 4, 8. And the building the next one, well, we have that stuff for now. I don't know.
I
how
don't
long it
disagree
will
with
take.
you, but I'll offer the example of Flushing, right? Outside of the Main Street area, it's 1 and 2 family homes, but the prices are up to $2 million. So what I will say is that, and they have really tight zoning. So what I'll say is maybe because of our relative isolation here, we don't experience the same kind of price rises that they do in other parts of the city. Do we believe that this has any impact on that, or we're saying not at all, not a chance? Because that's what I'm hearing.
Well, I don't know. I don't think most people want to be isolated. You know, I think if you wanted to be isolated, you probably wouldn't live in New York City. And, you know, I think part of the value of being part of the city.
Don't say that, because that's the reason for your proposal. You're increasing connection here, so we're not as isolated as we are, so.
That's true.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I'm right. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, maybe people don't agree with this. I just assume that the more connected people were, the better their quality of life. The more options we have, you know, personally and economically.
I mean, another point to make is that, right.
It made it a half an hour less of a ride. It's still a long commute. Who you kidding? Okay?
It's so long commute.
If I want to get to Midtown, I have an hour and a half trip to get to Midtown right now. Okay? If this decreased it by a half an hour, even from my office, which is on Cross Bay Boulevard and Rockaway Boulevard, if I hop the train, it is a 1 hour ride to Midtown. A half an hour to downtown Brooklyn, about 40 minutes to downtown Manhattan. How can you say it's going to make us less isolated? It's a long commute even with that addition. That would just make it more reasonable.
You see, most people just watching right now, Ozone Park, this going from the Rockaways. If you have to leave Rockaway to go into the city, it's 2 hours. It's 2 hours. And if you're lucky enough to get on one of those trains that's running express, right? It would take about an hour and a half because it would be express, but it's still, when you reach places like, what's it called, Horan, that express train don't leave until the other train come in from